Extrema and intervals of monotonicity, which basically means we're going to find the highest value and the lowest value, or max and min for the extrema. For the monotonicity, we're going to do increase, decrease, and constant. Now, certain things we have to be very, very careful with. With max and mins, we always do y values. And for increase, decrease, and constant, we always do x values. So always keep that in mind. So let's look at this example. We're only going to do the intervals of increasing, decreasing, and constant. So when you look at this, totally ignore the y values. Only thing we're concerned with are the x values. So when you read the graph, always read it left to right. Left to right. So we're going to come from the left. Now this curve actually doesn't ever stop to the left. So what we're going to say is it's coming from negative infinity and it's going down. Now it's going down to, well, you can say it like this: all the y values are going down from negative infinity and to the x value of -2. So one thing you can do is actually mark it off, and I will in a second. And then from -2 to 2, it's constant, it's neither increasing or decreasing. And then from 2 and then to the right, where I was going to the right, it's going to positive infinity. So from 2 to infinity, it's going up. So here's what I'm going to do. For decreasing, I'm going to use a down arrow, and we're going to use parentheses. I always use parentheses in this class. Some classes use brackets, but we're going to use parentheses. So it comes from negative infinity to -2, parentheses. It's always going down. And then constant, I use that notation for constant. It's going from -2 to 2. It's remaining constant, which means it's neither going up or down. And once again, I'm using parentheses. And then from 2 to infinity, it's going up, which means it's increasing. So down, constant, up. And we're going to mark it off like this if you want to see it this way also. Hope I don't miss it. I'm about to miss it. So if you look on this region only, it's going down. That's from negative infinity to -2 if you look at the x-axis. And then between -2 and 2, it's staying constant. And then from +2 all the way to infinity, it's always going up. Up. And I always use parentheses and x values when you do increase, decrease, and constant. Let's do a couple more examples. This one, we're not given any points, so we're going to find them. On this one, we're also going to find all the extrema, and then the increase, decrease, and constant. Extrema or maximum ends. So the first thing I want to do is actually label that point. That point is 0, -8. And I want to label that point, and that point is 2, 0. So the first thing I want to do, I want to do the max and min. These are relative max and mins, which means they're only maximum over a certain region, and the minimum over a certain region, not over the whole thing, over the whole graph, or the whole domain. So if we look at the maximum, what we see is it has a maximum value at this point, 2, 0, and we always use the y value. So the maximum is y equals 0, and you might want to say at x equals 2 if that helps you out. But don't put the point and don't put the x value as your answer. The actual maximum value is y equals 0. Then the minimum value is the 0 and -8. And by the way, anytime you're doing these max and mins, I'll go up here and demonstrate and show it to you just so you can put in your notes. It always looks something like this. And the minimums are always something like this. You see a low point, a valley. This is a mountaintop and this is a valley. So that's what you're looking for in these graphs. So the minimum, if you look at that valley, is y equals -8 because we're using the y value at x equals 0. Now I'm going to do increase, decrease, and there's no constant if you look at it. Increase and decrease. Now when I do that, I'm going to totally ignore the y values. I'm only going to do the x values. It looks like we got an arrow here, which means it's always going to the left. We have an arrow here, which means it's always going to the right. Yes, it is going down, but it's also going to the right. It is going up, but it's also going to the left. So from negative infinity to 0, because we're using the x value, it's always going down. And then from 0 to 2, it's always going up. And then from 2 to infinity, it's always going down. So the increase is from 0 to 2. Just this part right here. That's from 0 to 2. Do not use the y values. And then it's decreasing from negative infinity to 0. And then also from 2, because we're using the x value, 2 to infinity. And use a union symbol in between those to connect the two intervals. And it's not constant anywhere. So once again, what you're looking at the breaks in the regions. So if this part right here is from negative infinity to 0, it's always going down. And from this one to this one, it's always going up. And then from here all the way to the forever to the right, it's going down again. When you do max and min, it's the y values. When you do increase, decrease, and constant, it's the x values, and it's always parentheses. Now let's do this one. We might need a calculator to help us with this one, even though we really don't need it, because you should know how to graph by now just by looking at it. But let's say that you don't. So we're going to type it in: x plus 3 squared minus 4. Now we see that. Now hopefully you've already seen a video somewhere, or maybe you've been looking ahead or something, and you notice that we think that the number, or this minimum value, which is what we want, can be found by looking at the equation. And it actually can be. See that plus 3? If you change the sign, you get a negative 3, and then a negative 4, you keep the sign. And that's going to be the point right there. Now you may not be aware of how to do that, so I'm going to show you how to find that on your calculator. So if you look at the trace, above it you see calculate, which is yellow. If you hit second trace, you'll see a minimum maximum key. If you look at the graph, that's a minimum value because it's in the valley. So second trace, minimum, which is 3, and that's for left bound, right bound. Now what I could do is I could use my left and right arrow keys and move the cursor, but I'm not going to, because I'm just going to count, and I'm going to say that it's around negative 3 is the x value, so I'm just going to type in like negative 8. Make sure you hit the negative, not do what I did, and hit enter. And what it does is it brings up this arrow right here pointing to the right. And it's going to ask for a right bound. Now in the right bound, I can actually move my arrow if I want to until I'm to the right of that low value, that valley. Then I'm going to hit enter. And what you'll see, you should notice that these two arrows are facing each other, and if I were to bring that point up, it should be between those two. And since it is, I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to give me the maximum value. And if it doesn't, that means I did something wrong with my bounds. And there you go. Anytime you see something like that, that is a negative 3. The calculator does approximations. It's exactly negative 3, negative 4, and you can look at the equation to see that. So what that means is, max, there's no max. Min, it's at y equals negative 4. Once again, it's the y value at x equals negative 3. Let's do increase and decrease. Once again, I'm going to ignore that negative 4, and it's coming from negative infinity, and it's going down. So it's decreasing from negative infinity to negative 3, because we're using the x value, and we're always using parentheses. And it's increasing. You can see that going down, going up, and it's increasing from negative 3 to positive infinity. And it isn't constant anywhere. Now if we were to look at our table, if you look at negative 3, you'll notice, if I say I start up here and I come from the left, because negative is to the left. I'm coming to the left. You notice these are all these y values are getting smaller. And then we get the negative 3. Notice what happens. Negative 4 and negative 2 have the same values, but it's decreasing from -4 to -3 because these positive numbers are getting smaller, and once you get to -3, -4, that's getting smaller also, which means it's going down. And then from -3, and we start going to the right, which means we're going to the positive. Notice these y values are all getting bigger. It means it's increasing. So that's kind of a way to use your calculator on the table. It doesn't always find everything for you, but it can give you a good indicator or a good check on whether or not you're correct. So, once again, max and min use the y values, increase, decrease use the x values, and parentheses.